Welcome to the Vin Armani Show. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Vin Armani. Also on Twitter and Periscope at Vin Armani is my handle there. And of course, we are streaming live on the Facebook page of our wonderful content partner, Activist Post. That is facebook.com/Activist Post. If you are not following them on Facebook, go and do it. That is how I keep up to date. We have some amazing stories today. Many of them are from them, and they're always helping us to curate our content. Very excited about the show today. So it's Monday morning. We are coming to you live from fabulous Las Vegas. This week, most interesting story, and we're going to do a deep dive into that. Vault 7, the WikiLeaks release. Not what the media quite played it up to be, but we're going to talk about what exactly that means, because this has been going over and over in my mind almost obsessively all week. Also, wonderful guest, Kevin Hobbs of the Vanbex Group. Interesting story of how he wound up becoming a guest. We're going to learn some things about the blockchain. So we talk about Bitcoin a lot, and people know that the underlying technology of Bitcoin is a concept, an engineering concept, a software concept, a hardware concept called the blockchain. It's a little bit difficult to explain, and there are some additional things on the blockchain that are even bigger than cryptocurrency. Of course, Bitcoin is at all-time highs, and it's jumping up and down. There was a big story about the Bitcoin ETF that was put in by the Winklevoss twins of Facebook lawsuit fame, the guys who claimed that they invented Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg stole it. They had kind of a letdown. We're not going to cover that story. It's a complex financial story, but what I will say is I am very, very glad as an agorist that Bitcoin is still in the place that it's at, which is sort of a counter-economic means. Leading up to that, there were some other stories this week, and to help me cover those, as always, my good friend, co-host and producer, Mr. Christian Reyes. Christian.
Good
morning, sir.
Good
morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great. So this our guest today, Kevin Hobbs, he actually it's funny how things work out. I'm very, very glad actually that we had a guest who was scheduled, who decided in a very sort of cryptic way that he was backing out. In the time that I had him scheduled, I guess 2 weeks ago, I got sent a text by a friend of mine that was basically a press release. And it was a press release about a strip club opening here in Las Vegas. Now, strip clubs open and close in Las Vegas. This is a strip club capital. But this was different, and I know that this is why I ended up with this press release, because this strip club was highly focused on Bitcoin and the blockchain.
Interesting.
So it's cool, and I will let Kevin talk more about that. Kevin is helping them with this interesting technological solution. They're basically doing kind of a members-only strip club, which is cool in and of itself. It's a sexy story in and of itself. But the cool part about this is the technology behind how they are basically selling memberships.
Wow.
And it's using this blockchain technology.
That's cool.
So, yeah, it's a strip club story, but that's not really what I'm most interested in. Kevin is the CEO of the Vanbex Group, and they do these very custom blockchain solutions. So we know about cryptocurrency. We talk about cryptocurrency. We talk about Bitcoin, right? And there are other altcoins, Litecoin, Dash, Ethereum, which is a coin which is a currency and blockchain that we'll be talking about a lot today, because this has a lot to do with Ethereum. What a lot of people don't understand is that the real power in the blockchain. Now remember, it's a distributed ledger, which means it's this sort of shared data across millions and millions of computers talking to each other as though they were one. So when you start thinking about that, this hive computing concept, there's a lot of different things that you can do, and those are even more powerful than Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the first and easiest application of something that I really do believe is going to change the world. I do believe that this is the next equivalent in terms of technological advances. This is the next internet.
Wow.
The way that the internet changed the world, that it allowed us to communicate, this is going to allow us to do things as a human race that are going to blow people's minds. And these are early concepts, and so I'm very glad to have
That's
Kevin on.
cool. That's very cool.
You know, man, it's this week I was thinking a lot, and after our last show, and then after being in Mexico, I've had, I'm really heavily now working more on my new book, and which takes a lot of work, and I need to be inspired to do it. You know what I mean? A philosophy book. It takes a lot of thinking. It's exhausting. But one of the things that just keeps occurring to me, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, is, as an agorist, as an anarchist, I really do want to, and I strive to embody the idea of living as though the state doesn't exist.
Yeah.
If the state is unnecessary, living my life in such a way that I'm not reliant on the state.
Right.
That's one of the first things, right? That I'm not asking anything from the state. But two, that I stop expecting solutions from the state.
Interesting.
Right, we talked about this. We had a long conversation about this after we prepped the show yesterday. And this is something that's been going over and over and over in my mind. And it's a concept that I think most people are not really introduced to because there's such pageantry around the idea of the state.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
the media and people talking about, if this person wins the election, well, he's going to do this. Well, she's going to do this. Well, he's going to do this. And yet, time after time, year after year, they never do.
It's the same shit.
Nothing changes. Nothing changes.
Yeah.
And when things change, it's things changing not in government, that government had nothing to do with. It's the reason why people laughed at Al Gore for saying he invented the internet. You know what I mean? Because it's like, no, you fucking didn't invent the internet. No, you weren't even close to inventing the internet, Al. So, what I thought we would do today as we started, because the big story this week was obviously Vault 7 and the WikiLeaks release.
Right.
I went over that, looked through it, just not a lot there. Not even the government solving their own problems, but yet it was really hyped up. I don't really know what to think about the purpose of it.
Yeah.
I had thought, well, we'll get into that. Before that, though, I want to just lead, and I think that this is a very good lead-in. I want to get into the idea of things, one, not really changing when it comes to the state, even over the course of thousands of years. And two, what I want to get into is what it looks like, what an established and sort of old, corrupt state looks like. A state that is no longer innovating, a state that no longer presents any real solutions. Because in the beginning, they all present solutions, right? In the beginning, they're all fresh, like the Declaration of Independence. What? Hold these truths to be self-evident? All men are created equal? Endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights? What? We all have rights? Life, liberty? Pursuit of happiness? Wait, the whole reason that government is instituted among men is to protect those rights? Are you kidding? For people who came from a king? Right? Or the Russian Revolution and them saying, the workers, we can take control. Like these concepts, I mean, they get into the mind and you're like, wow, that's powerful. But then they get established and they get in there and the state is just there to control people. It's a control tool. Eventually you get some psychopath in charge and boom, it no longer has anything to offer. Now, the stronger the idea, right, the more powerful the idea, the longer it can hold its grasp.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And one of the, but, what I will say is this, as it starts to get old, as it starts to not have anything else to offer, what it starts to do is it starts to turn back in on itself. That the actions that are taken by the people within the state, by the functionaries within the state, are really them sort of looking at themselves and looking at the other people in the state.
Yep.
I mean, you see that in any organization, right? You see that in as anything becomes a bureaucracy, right? That it's all about like procedure. We need to relook at our procedure and how we're doing this. It's not about what the outcome is, it's about the procedure. And you spend hours and hours and hours in meetings about like, oh, how are we going to communicate with each other? Should we use this? Should we use this? Well, I don't like that I'm always getting 25 emails that really could just be one email and blah, 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 right? So that's what it is. States, as they get established, that's what they start to look like. So when you see that, you know that the state has reached a point of corruption. Right? When
makes sense.
the arguments are not about anything substantive. The arguments are not like about, well, is there going to be more federal rights or is it going to be more states' rights? The arguments are about shit like our first story. So, news number one. I do believe that we have reached a place, and I think that this election proves it, that whether it's the United States, whether it's Europe and the European Union, all of the established West has reached really a place of religion. And you see this because you see the different factions jumping off with their own ideologies. But it's so navel-gazing, like there's no solutions to come from them. And I've said many times that what I believe the state will end up looking like, our state, which like the United States, the Western state, Western governments, what it will end up looking like in the future by its own nature, not because anybody's going to cause it, just because this is what happens as culture moves forward, is very much what the Catholic Church looks like today. Now, let's remember that at one time, the Catholic Church was one of the most, if not the most powerful institutions in the world. They waged wars over decades, the Crusades. The Pope was more powerful than any king of Europe. The Pope could order people killed. There was the Inquisition. They were torturing people. Worse than Guantanamo, bro. Worse than Guantanamo. But let's see what the big deal in the Catholic Church is today. It's this priest story. This was this week. Will Pope Francis allow married men to become priests? This is from The Atlantic. In an interview with the German magazine Die Zeit this week, Pope Francis spoke about the Roman Catholic Church's priest shortage, which has left Catholics in many rural areas without a clerical leader. The interviewer asked whether viri probati, or married men with a proven fidelity to the church, might be able to join the priesthood. Quote, "We must think, yes, viri probati are a possibility," said Francis, according to a translation published by the Catholic news agency. "But then we must also consider what tasks they could perform, for example, in isolated communities." The Pope's comments are not a sign that major changes are coming to the Catholic Church. He affirmed that celibacy is still an important tradition and suggested only that he's open to the possibility of studying exceptions. But his comments do show that he's keenly aware of the effects of the major priest shortage in the Church. His Argentinian background may be one reason why he's focused on this issue. The problem is particularly acute in Latin America. So, this is what you see when a state has become highly, highly established. That's the big news. Now, we had a hell of an election happen. Divided the country. But what substantive has actually come from it? What are we talking about in terms of in our own state? Right? Now, let's remember, the Catholic Church, they also had a sort of a big deal with the leadership change, a rebrand. Now, you may remember that there was a pope that stepped down, and that particular pope maybe was not the best brand for the Catholic Church. Do we have this picture of Benedict? If you really kind of don't want your leader to look like Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars. So what did they do? What did they do? Because people were, remember, pedophile priests. Remember that was a big story? Remember? And you had Emperor Palpatine, so of course, yeah, he looks like a damn predator. So they're like, I know what to do, rebrand. And then you get Francis. Now this guy, he doesn't represent an organization that's full of pedophiles, right? Right? And that went away. It went away. You do a rebrand. Now we've got a guy who half or more of the country truly, truly hates, and maybe 25% love like he's some sort of a god. But what are we talking about? We're talking about deleting his tweets. You got this Trump tweet story? This is so ridiculous. This is from the Huffington Post. Congress warns Donald Trump, stop deleting your tweets. When President Donald Trump or a member of his staff deletes a tweet, they may be violating federal law. Two top congressmen warned the White House this week. Representatives Jason Chaffetz of Utah, Republican of Utah, and Elijah Cummings, Democrat of Maryland, chairman and ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, sent a letter to White House counsel Don McGahn on Wednesday expressing concerns about the Trump administration's record-keeping habits and its non-transparent use of social media and other forms of electronic communication. One example the lawmakers cited is Trump's habit of misspelling and then deleting tweets, which they warned could pose a violation to the Presidential Records Act if the deleted tweets are not archived. Quote, many of the messages sent from these accounts are likely to be presidential records and therefore must be preserved, they wrote, referring to both Trump's personal @RealDonaldTrump account and his official @POTUS account. It has been reported, however, that President Trump has deleted tweets, and if those tweets were not archived, it could pose a violation of the Presidential Records Act, Chaffetz and Cummings wrote in the letter. So, the Presidential Records Act, you've got two congressmen, a Republican and a Democrat, who are actually spending time sitting around talking and then drafting a letter about Donald Trump deleting a tweet if he misspells it and then sending out a new tweet. That if he's not keeping the deleted tweets, that he's going to be in violation of the Presidential Records Act. So here's the Presidential Records Act. Presidential Records Act of 1978. Never mind Twitter. There's no internet. There's not even email. And it governs records created or received after January 20th, 1981. Again, this is the married priests situation. It makes no difference. We're going back to something from 1978, dealing with the technology that didn't exist, that couldn't have existed in 1978. Furthermore, these congressmen sat around, they drafted a letter. The one thing I know is that they did not call Twitter. They could have picked up the phone. You're a congressman. You could have picked up the phone and called Twitter. Because here's all I had to do to figure out that, hey, probably, and in the Records Act it says that if the records exist elsewhere, which, by the way, they're on Twitter servers. They're not like on government, it's not on a government server. So could they get these with a subpoena if they asked for them? Could they get the deleted tweets? Did they call Twitter? Did they ask? Do they know? Or are they just wasting the money that they stole via taxes to pay for their salaries and their staff? This is what, they stole your money and now this is what they're spending it on, just for you to know. So I went ahead. I was like, I wonder if Twitter keeps deleted tweets. Now, I don't know the answer for sure, but I have somewhat of an idea. I went here. You got Twitter number one. I just went ahead. I went to Twitter's API. This is their developer documentation. We're going to be looking at some developer documentation with Vault 7. Take this real easy. These are basically the little calls that if I make an app that I can make these calls and I can do things on Twitter. This is a computer talking to a computer. This is how a programmer makes a computer talk to a computer, is through an API. It's a programming interface, automated programming interface. So if we go to Twitter number 2 here, I won't linger on this for too long, but if you see what's highlighted down there at the bottom, basically this is an example of a deleted tweet. And it was, the text was, Vimeo integrates with Dropbox for easier video uploads and shares. And then there's a link that was a URL, a Twitter URL that was created. Now this tweet is gone, but that link still exists. My guess would be, having been a developer for quite a long time, basically a decade myself professionally, it's not good practice to be delete, especially when you're Twitter and you've got data center upon data center. It's not good practice to be completely removing from your database deleted tweets. They're probably pushed off into basically the equivalent of a recycle bin or an archive. They're probably archived. That would be my general thought. But these congressmen don't have enough technical know-how, or don't have anybody around them with enough technical know-how, or don't care to find out the answer before wasting everybody's time. First off, it's a waste of time to even worry about this, but second off, it's a waste of time if you're drafting letters and they're writing about it in the Huffington Post and it's becoming an issue. Oh, Trump might be violating this or whatever. This is what they're spending your money on. They're not building roads, okay? This is what they're doing with your money. This is what they're doing with your tax money. Which brings us to another story, because this is story number 2. Even those who have been or who have appeared to be the greatest champions for the protection of the taxpayer are still spending your money. Stolen money. Like, the one thing you will never hear coming from these guys is, let's stop stealing money altogether. It's never about, let's stop stealing the money. Like, let's steal a little less from this guy, or let's steal less from this guy and more from this guy. Or let's spend that stolen money on this as opposed to this. But it's never, let's stop stealing the money. It's never, let's take the moral stand and let's stop stealing the money. So the other story, which, look, sometimes, obviously, you steal some money. If you stole some money, I would much rather that you spent that money on giving it to charity for kids with cancer than you spent the money on hiring a hitman to kill those same kids. I think anybody would prefer that. But what I would really prefer is that you didn't steal the money in the first place. Like, it doesn't make the theft any better. That's got to be the principle. And I think this is important to remember, and I have a little prediction at the end of the show. Hopefully we'll have enough time. I have a little prediction that's been going on in my head. But see, I see something ramping up, because this reminds me of right around maybe 20 years ago, 1998, 1999, leading up to 2000, 2001. There are a lot of similarities here. This story, from Activist Post, is this Paul Gabbard story. Rand Paul introduces Tulsi Gabbard's Stop Arming Terrorists Act into Senate. This week, U.S. Senator Rand Paul introduced the Stop Arming Terrorists Act, Senate 532, to prevent American taxpayers' money from being used to directly or indirectly support armed militants who are allied with or often working under the command of Al-Qaeda, ISIS, or other terrorist groups. The legislation serves as a companion bill to H.R. 608, which Representative Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii reintroduced in January. One of the unintended consequences of nation building and open-ended intervention is American funds and weapons benefiting those who hate us, said Dr. Paul. This legislation will strengthen our foreign policy, enhance our national security, and safeguard our resources. Safeguard our resources. Wonder who the our is he's referring to. Quote, for years, the U.S. government has been supporting armed militant groups, working directly with and often under the command of terrorist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda in their fight to overthrow the Syrian government. Rather than spending trillions of dollars on regime change wars in the Middle East, we should be focused on defeating terrorist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda and using our resources to invest in rebuilding our communities here at home, said Representative Gabbard. Quote, the fact that American taxpayer dollars are being used to strengthen the very terrorist groups we should be focused on defeating should alarm every member of Congress and every American. We call on our colleagues and the administration to join us in passing this legislation. Now look, this is a good thing. This is good. Like, this is preferable. It is very much preferable to not, if there is money to be spent, to not spend money arming terrorists. But here's the problem. The problem is, this looks very, very similar. At least it's a problem to me. This looks very, very similar to me as we're talking about states getting old and established and the same patterns happening over and over and over again. Because someone that most of us respect, but who has some internal inconsistencies when it comes to this, Rand Paul's father, Ron Paul, had made similar alliances back in the day with Dennis Kucinich, two anti-war guys, both of them in the Congress, but on opposite sides of the aisle, pushing through several bills. So back in the day, Ron Paul co-sponsored Kucinich's attempts to end the illegal wars and impeach Bush. Kucinich, in turn, co-sponsored and helped lobby the left on Ron Paul's longtime Audit the Fed bill, which finally passed the House in 2012. And in fact, in 2011, Ron Paul said he'd consider putting Dennis Kucinich in his cabinet if he won for president. Representative Ron Paul, Texas, this from The Hill back in 2011, says he would consider putting the liberal Congressman Dennis Kucinich of Ohio in his cabinet if he were to win the presidency in 2012. Paul said his libertarian political philosophy helps him connect with some on the far left, including Kucinich, who shares Paul's general anti-war stance. Paul joked that if he brought the Ohio congressman aboard in his administration, he might have to create a Department of Peace, which is something that Kucinich talked about quite often. Paul spokesman Jesse Benton later said the remark was a joke and said Kucinich is too ideologically different from Paul to be a candidate for a cabinet spot. More recently, there was Chelsea Manning. Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich got together to ask President Obama to free Chelsea Manning. We have this Manning story. This is from the Ron Paul Institute. Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich sent a letter this week to President Barack Obama. This is in 2017. President Barack Obama requesting that Obama grant the application for clemency submitted by Chelsea Manning and commute her sentence to time served. The reason of Obama taking this action would be the whistleblower's prompt release from prison. Noting that Manning has, quote, already spent more time in prison than anyone previously convicted for providing information to the media, the two former U.S. House members, who have both run for president in their respective parties' primaries, declared their belief that Manning received a sentence that was excessively punitive and intended to send a chilling message to future potential whistleblowers acting in the public interest. So what we see is there is a place for a niche, for this particular niche. You had Dennis Kucinich and Ron Paul, both anti-establishment, we could definitely call them that. They were pro-peace, anti-war. They had long careers, both of them, Ron Paul in particular, in Congress. During their time in Congress, the wars continued. Now we have the son. So think about that. Think about being so successful, because really that's your job. What's your job when you're a politician? Your job is to get reelected time and time again, take your paycheck, then you've done it. Ron Paul kept getting reelected. And look, even now, Ron Paul is still going. Now, God bless the man for being on the more preferable side of the state, but all those years, salary, expenses, salary of his staff, who paid for that? You did. the country did was stolen money. And now his son in the Senate. Who's paying for his mortgage? And Tulsi Gabbard. Who's paying her expenses? You are. Money stolen. Yeah, it's preferable. It's great. You want to end war? You really want to end war? Stop stealing. Stop stealing. Because the same money that goes to the same pot and the same way that the money is received to pay for those congressmen's salaries, no matter how they vote. Remember that. They get paid no matter how they vote. And they vote on their salaries. The same money that goes to pay their salaries, same money that goes to pay war. Taxation straight up and taxation via borrowing, which is basically just taxing future generations. That's the real way to end war. Because what we see is that it's just a money game. We've reached a point where it's just, how do I keep the money coming in? How do I keep the money coming in? What real solutions, compared to the amount of money that comes in, what real solutions does the Catholic Church provide? It's great. Charities, schools. But the Pope sits on like a golden throne. What's going on in Vatican City, man? There's a lot of expense there. Now, granted, that's voluntary. Now, maybe the state will get to that point. Now, in terms of wasted state money, I actually think that that is the biggest part of our next story, and a story that we're going to spend some time on. We've got half hour? Okay, maybe we can get through this in a half hour before we have to go to our guest. If not, we'll extend it a little bit further. But what I want to get into is this, which is our big story, our main story, and that is this Vault 7 story. And the truth of the matter is, Vault 7 is empty. Was super hyped. We're going to do a deep dive into this. We're going to look at what was said about Vault 7, what was said about what was in it, and what's actually the deal with Vault 7. Now, let's first hear from the man himself, Julian Assange, with a little preview that he gave to the media in a press conference about what is Vault 7. Let's play this press conference.
Welcome to the WikiLeaks press conference on the Central Intelligence Agency. On Tuesday, the 7th of March, WikiLeaks began its new series of leaks on the Central Intelligence Agency, codenamed Vault 7. This series of publications is the largest ever publication of confidential documents on the agency. In fact, the collection of some 8,761 documents which we published on Tuesday is already the largest publication of confidential documents on the agency. The material comes from an isolated, that means disconnected from other computer systems, top secret security network situated inside the CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence. Now, that center is both in Virginia, but also, importantly, there is a branch hidden inside the Frankfurt consulate in Germany. We've put out some aerial shots of that and the details from our publications about how CIA officers are instructed to penetrate German customs and operate there to develop attacks and support attacks across Europe, Africa, and the Middle East from the Frankfurt consulate. Now, this has already come out as a result of our earlier publications. I'll go into reactions and updates quickly, but the Central Intelligence Agency lost control of its entire cyber weapons arsenal What do I mean by cyber weapons? Those are weaponized viruses, trojans, and malware designed to penetrate the smartphones, smart TVs, computer systems of the world, and then control them, disable them, insert information to them, extract information from them. Now, this is a historic act of devastating incompetence to have created such an arsenal and stored it all in one place and not secured it. WikiLeaks discovered the material as a result of it being passed around a number of different members of the US intelligence community out of control in an unauthorized fashion.
All right, so this is Julian Assange. It was quite a long press conference, but that's sort of a good intro to the tone. And that has been the tone, and this is the tone that's carried through in the media. When he says the CIA lost control of its entire cyber weapons arsenal, and this is a historic act of devastating incompetence. He talked about systems that were designed to penetrate and control phones and TVs. And, you know, it reminds me of how I often take for granted, and I think people who are on the technical side, like I take for granted that people actually know that certain things that they see like in a James Bond movie or Minority Report, or more importantly, the Snowden movie with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, that they realize that like it doesn't look like that. Like we are not at the technological level. I remember in the Snowden movie when they were showing Snowden being introduced to PRISM, which is the program that captures all of this. It's capturing all, like Carnivore was a previous one that captures all your phone conversations and your texts and all of that. And there's a scene where the NSA guy is turning on people's cameras all over the world and it's streaming back to him. PRISM never described that. Never. That's not even what the program was. This is something created by Hollywood, but it gets into our heads as though that's actually real. And I think that WikiLeaks is capitalizing on this. Now, there could be some conspiracy theories about why Julian Assange would overblow this. I think when we look at, what I want to do first is let's take a look. Let's look at what was actually there. Let's look at what was said by WikiLeaks on the actual Vault 7. Let's look at the source documents, what their executive summary said, what was going on, and then let's look at the actual files that we're talking about. So first off, this is Vault 7. They said this is the first release. It's 8,000 documents. Some have been redacted. The vast majority, by the way, are just empty pages, even what they've put up, or either empty pages or just absolutely nothing useful on them. This is the first release, they said. They said this is like just 1%. And some people are saying, oh, well, then that means that there's going to be so much more in the other releases. But I would hope that they would at least release something. And so I think it's really what's missing in this release that's more important than what's in this release. Because what's missing is anything surprising to even a mid-level developer who works professionally. And really what I saw in this was that the CIA has a lot less capability than really good hackers that I have known. Which, as an agorist, as an anarchist, that's a pretty good thing. Like, it takes away a lot of my fear about the CIA. And so I want to share some of these things so that maybe you can get a better grasp on what's actually in Vault 7 and have a real view of what the government actually can do. Or perhaps this is the CIA via WikiLeaks releasing their weakest code set and the weakest information because they actually have more. You could believe that conspiracy theory. You could. You could, if you really want to. But let's take a look at what WikiLeaks says about Vault 7 and what they are releasing. So this is the executive summary that they put together. This is straight from WikiLeaks. These are just the sections. Dozens of zero-day, they describe, these are, CIA has dozens of zero-day is in quotes. So what zero-day is referring to is a 0 day is basically a bug in code that has been known about for 0 days. So it's a bug in code that no one has started fixing, right? So once a development team knows about it, it now becomes a 1 day, right? And then 2, 3, and how many days does it take to fix it? So these are exploits that so far other people, that the developers, the actual companies that own the either be it Apple or Google or Microsoft, or Samsung, that they have not started working on. So dozens of zero-day weaponized exploits against a wide range of US and European company products, including Apple's iPhone, Google's Android, and Microsoft Windows, and even Samsung TVs, which are turned into covert microphones. Next. The increasing sophistication of surveillance techniques has drawn comparisons with George Orwell's 1984, but Weeping Angel, developed by the CIA's Embedded Devices Branch, EDB, which infests smart TVs, transforming them into covert microphones, is surely its most emblematic realization. We're specifically going to talk about Weeping Angel next. As of October 2014, the CIA was also looking at infecting the vehicle control systems used by modern cars and trucks. The purpose of such control is not specified, but it would permit the CIA to engage in nearly undetectable assassinations. Okay, first thing I want to say about this, we're not even going to show a document on this because it's only one line as part of a meeting schedule of things to be discussed in a particular meeting. There's no code, there's no manual, there's no description of anything. So this is just pure and simple hype. One line in a meeting describing, talking about taking control of a vehicle system. So yeah, they're looking at it. They're looking at it. But there's absolutely no information in this release about that. Go ahead, next. The CIA's Mobile Devices Branch, MDB, developed numerous attacks to remotely hack and control popular smartphones. Now that's a little wrong, to remotely hack and control popular smartphones. We're going to look at that. Infected phones can be instructed to send the CIA the user's geolocation, audio, and text communications, as well as covertly activate the phone's camera and microphone. Next. Despite iPhone's minority share, 14.5% of the global smartphone market in 2016, a specialized unit in the CIA's Mobile Development Branch produces malware to infest, control, and exfiltrate data from iPhones and other Apple products running iOS, such as iPads. Next. A similar unit targets Google's Android, which is used to run the majority of the world's smartphones, 85%, including Samsung, HTC, and Sony. 1.15 billion Android-powered phones were sold last year. Year zero shows that as of 2016, the CIA had 24 weaponized Android 0 days, which it has developed itself and obtained from GCHQ, which I guess this is Britain, NSA, and cyber arms contractors. Next. The CIA also runs a very substantial effort to infect and control Microsoft Windows users with its malware. This includes multiple local and remote weaponized 0 days, air-gap jumping viruses such as Hammerdrill, which infects software distributed on CD, DVDs, infectors for removable media such as USBs, systems to hide data and images or in covert disk areas, it's called Brutal Kangaroo, and to keep its malware infestations going. The CIA has developed automated multi-platform malware attack and control systems covering Windows, Mac OS X, Solaris, Linux, and more, such as EDB's Hive and the related cutthroat and swindle tools. The CIA attack system Fine Dining provides 24 decoy applications for CIA spies to use. To witnesses, the spy appears to be running a program showing videos, example VLC, presenting slides, which would be Prezi, playing a computer game like Breakout, or even running a fake virus scanner like Kaspersky. But while the decoy application is on the screen, the underlying system is automatically infected and ransacked. All right, so that's the basics of what they wanted to send off to people to freak them out. Now, let's talk about the truth. We're going to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, basically 6 of these programs that were essentially mentioned. Now, I think off hearing Julian Assange and hearing the summary, This is what I took away in terms of what I was expecting. What I was expecting to see was, I was expecting to see capabilities, and I think this is what most of you are expecting to see. Capabilities where the CIA remotely from somewhere, he was talking about Germany or whatever, that the CIA remotely could remotely get into my phone, somehow turn on the microphone, turn on the camera, or get into my computer, or get into my Samsung Smart TV. Christian, is that what you got from is that what you get from out of this when you see and hear those things? Is that what goes off in your mind?
Yeah, definitely. It sounds a lot more mysterious and magical and
well, I mean, but I mean, just that the idea, like you're reading that. I just want to know that I'm not just overblowing it in my own mind. But I think most people, and what I read most in the media, was that what people were talking about was the idea is that these are remote hacks.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That there's somebody sitting somewhere, I've got my phone, and I need to put tape over my phone because the CIA has the capability of turning on my microphone or turning on my camera, looking at me, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Now, perhaps they do. I'm not saying they don't. But the problem I have here is that's what this executive summary makes it sound like. Mm-hmm. That's what Julian Assange is essentially inferring. I need that to be reflected in the actual documents, right?
Yeah.
Because if something is inferred, but what's reflected in the documents is something very, very different, then there's a problem. And that's what I'm seeing.
Yep.
So I want to go through these. We'll do a deep dive here. I don't know if we can do it in 15 minutes, but if not, we'll get Kevin Hobbs, our guest, and we'll push it back just a little tiny bit.
Okay.
We will get to him though. Let's start with umbrage. So this was described in the media quite a bit as a way that, and it's totally misdescribed, that somehow the CIA had the capability to, because they had this collection of other malware that they had gotten from other governments, so they had the ability to basically put any kind of fingerprint. So they could put a Russian fingerprint to make it look like Russia did a hack. That I kept seeing that over and over and over again. And it was in reference to umbrage, because there's nothing else in there that even hints at this. What is umbrage? Umbrage is basically the code name of a team. So a team and a library. What does it say? The Umbrage team maintains a library of application development techniques borrowed from in-the-wild malware. So this basically means things that are on hacker boards, that are on IRC channels. These are things that are out in the wild. The goal of this repository is to provide functional code snippets that can be rapidly combined into custom solutions. Rather than building feature-rich tools, which are often costly and can have significant CI value, not sure what that is. This effort focuses on developing smaller and more targeted solutions built to operational specifications. So this page organizes the collection based on its functionality, et cetera, et cetera. So basically what this is these are, let's look at these down here, these components. It's a long page, but there are some key ones on here, right? They've got one, webcam capture, which basically is capture things coming out of your webcam. Another one is Windows API keyloggers. A keylogger is basically a program that records every single keystroke that you make. So you imagine what that is. You imagine you're writing an email, you've got a keystroke, it records them all, and then it can send them off, or it can store them on a disk, and you can get the disk later. That could have passwords. That could have emails that you've written. It basically gets it before it gets to the program. It's a keylogger. Now, these have been around for really like 20 years. There was a time when Kinko's had a problem with people going in to the Kinko's and putting one of these keyloggers on a USB stick. I mean, and we're talking like 15 years ago. Putting keyloggers on USB sticks and stealing people's passwords, stealing their bank information and all that, because people would go and use Kinko's computers to do those things way back in the day, early days of the internet. All these are is they're just code snippets that are out there. They're just little pieces of code that do certain things that can then be integrated into other projects. It's nothing about putting some sort of fingerprint or doing that. These are just little programs that do certain things. It's very simple, and most programmers, if they don't keep a library like this, they know how to go out and get, that's what you spend most of your time as a programmer doing, is going and getting these component libraries. They're libraries. They're little components. It's like, okay, I need a webcam controller. I need something that does a clock, right? I need a Bluetooth thing. And you combine all of those little things together, and that's how you build a program. You don't write, most developers don't write out programs all the way through. Like, they don't reinvent the wheel. There's no reason. They say good developers code, great developers steal. Any software programmer that you listen to or that you talk to will tell you, oh yeah, some huge percentage of the code that I get is like basically copied and pasted and then modified. Just copied and pasted from online. Somebody's already done it and they've already posted the code. Why would you go and do it yourself? So that's all that Umbrage is it's a collection of these things. Maybe some of them came from China. Maybe some of them came from Russia, but they're common. The next thing is Hive. So this was described, this is the actual user guide. So in the development world, we have this phrase, it's called read the fucking manual, RTFM. When you don't know what something does, read the fucking manual. Here's the manual. Let's learn about Hive. This is classified as secret. So this was described. You go next to the next thing here. So here's all of the systems. This is basically a malware injection system for Windows, Solaris, Windows 2000. It's got some Linux. So you're talking about, these are for routers, these are for servers. This is for getting in there. You see down there, it's talking about a Linksys router flashed with a particular version of Linux. So these MikroTik, these are for routers and for servers. So this is trying to get in and capture data. Now, the question is, what's really happening? Is this remote? So go to the next one here. See if I can read this. It's a little bit small. But basically, if you look down here on the bottom, what's going on and what you have to understand is these are commands that are happening on a local machine. They're patching files that are going to be executed on a local machine, which basically means they have to have a level of access. You can go to the next one. That's the patcher. This talks about deployment. It basically says that the way that you deploy it is you stick it on the machine and then you run this program. It's a beacon and a trigger. So what it's doing is if there's a server somewhere and it's sending out information and it's waiting to see if there's a response, and then you can remotely control the computer. Well, we have things like this, like remote desktop. These are things that your applications on your computer are doing anyway. If someone has access to your computer, or you install a piece of malware, then yes, it can take control of your computer. Yes, it can turn on your webcam. If someone is able to get next to your computer and to install a piece of software, or if you install a piece of software, yes, they can take control. This is not new. Your computer right now is infested with malware. I promise you. And if you can be convinced, if a CIA spook can convince somebody to install a piece of software, yes, your computer can get owned. If you let the CIA have your laptop, if a CIA agent gets a hold of your laptop and they get administrative access, they know your password, yes, they can install malware, but it's not until it's installed that they have control. This is what you need to understand. This is not the fucking movies. They can't just take a fresh computer, at least not according to this. According to this, they got to do a lot of work beforehand in terms of installing this whole harness onto your computer. Yeah, once it's installed, they can take control. Of course they can. Of course, if you're connected to the internet right now, there are commands flowing back and forth over APIs. If you're watching this, there are commands flowing back and forth between a server and you. And depending on what the piece of software is, that command could be to execute something. This is how remote desktop works. Just go Google remote desktop. If I have a remote desktop installed on you, these are just running in the background, running headless, as we would say, running unbeknownst to you. So if they can get on your computer, then if they can get access to your computer, sure, they can install software. That's how it works. This fine dining thing was brought up. Can we do fine dining? Because this one I found most telling. So here's what we've got. This fine dining, that was the one where they said, oh, it'll throw up a fake screen and whatever. So it's like, talks about, here's the tool set concepts. It could be a case officer trying to target an asset's computer. It could be like a case officer trying to target a developmental. That's somebody that they're trying to recruit, trying to get information off his removable media, his thumb drive, his SD card. Basically what fine dining does is fine dining is a checklist that a particular spy who wants access to a computer is going to fill out for them to build him a specific tool for a specific application. How do we know this? Because right below that, if you go to the next on this, here it is. The case officer configuration tool. Who will be the operator of the tool? The choices are a case officer, an asset, a developmental, that's someone you're trying to recruit, or a liaison or liaison asset. Who is the target of the collection? Is it an asset, a developmental, a liaison asset, foreign information operations, foreign intelligence agency, foreign government entity, systems administrator, or comparable technical target, or other? Will the operator of the tool be watched while the collection is occurring? Yes or no? The one thing that you get from this, Christian, the important thing to draw from this is that each of these tools are custom to a certain operation. These are not like the CIA just says, oh, I want to look at Christian's phone.
Right.
So let's say the CIA wanted to look at your phone. That's a good example. Let's say the CIA wanted all the info on your phone. Well, the first thing they got to do is they got to go, or your tablet, they got to go, and the agent has to fill out this fine dining thing. Right? He's got to tell them a whole bunch about, okay, how are you going to get access to the phone? Are you going to be watched while you're doing this? What's the whole watch thing? The whole watch thing is, are you going to be watched while you're installing this? So then we've got to create a whole thing. And the fact of the matter is, this is not me guessing, because now we're going to cover, and why don't you do this? Go, if you could, throw on this Weeping Angel, and then if you could find Kevin Hobbs on the Skype there and just tell him we'll bring him on at 11, let's say 11:15.
Okay, cool.
Let's throw on Weeping Angel. Okay. This is the one that everybody was going nuts about, because this is the Samsung TV where it's like, oh, they turned the Samsung TV into a microphone. Now, what you would think is, oh, I'm watching my Samsung TV. I've got a Samsung TV at home. I know that's what people were thinking. I've got a Samsung Smart TV, so that means I can be watched. I'm watching TV, or my TV appears to be off, and the CIA could be watching me at any time. Now, let's talk about if that's really the case. Quick description of Weeping Angel. What does it do? Yes, it does turn a Samsung TV into a microphone. One thing that it does not do, it does not use the camera. It does not stream back. So it basically can't do live audio back like you're listening and you're listening to what's happening in the room. That's not even a part of this. And they go into the fact that that's not there. What it basically does is it records audio in little chunks, and then when the TV's turned back on, it runs a background process to send those chunks back. So it's basically almost like an answering machine that then, at a later time, sends the files back. But one of the things that you need to know is what you're going to keep seeing over and over and over again is you can't install Weeping Angel without being in the room with the TV. Let me say it again. The CIA can't install this program without being in the room with the TV, and we'll go over all the places where this is shown to be the case. Now, what I actually took this to be is I took this to be an actually very useful bug potentially for the CIA. Like, let's say you're trying to have a meeting with a terrorist in a hotel room. You could install this, basically make a TV that was a bug that looked like it was off, a Samsung Smart TV, and then you could put it in the room, and they could do a bug scan on the room, and it wouldn't show up. If you had the room pre-staged, here's a great bug. That's actually useful. What is it not useful for? It's not useful for spying on you at home. So here's the first thing where this shows up. What's one of the first things you got to do? You got to do a factory reset because you're going to have to put new firmware on it, because it only works on firmware versions 11111, 11112, 11116. You see that right above the highlighted. Factory reset. How do you do it? With the TV powered off, enter the following key presses on the remote. You got to be in the room. You got to be in the room. This is the normal Samsung TV remote. Let's go next. So here's all the things that they say. Here are the things that they need to do. Turn on or leave Wi-Fi turned on in the fake off mode. So basically, when this thing's recording, it appears to be off. Right? Fake off. Wi-Fi is not even on. Disconnected from the internet. Cannot stream audio. They'd like to do streaming audio. It says it right there. They'd like to do video capture and video snapshots. It doesn't do that. Here are the anomalies or limitations. If you update the firmware over the internet, it may take the implant off. The firmware version 11118 and beyond, which ended in 2014, eliminated the method of USB installation. Maximum possible storage is 700 megabytes. So it's got it, because as we said, it has to store. So I think there's one more on this perhaps. So here you go. How do you get the app on? It tells you right here, highlighted. The installation process is similar to a standard Samsung app. Okay. So what's the standard install for a Samsung app that's not in the App Store? Because this is obviously not in the App Store. What's the standard install? That's next. Go next, Christian. What do you got to do? You have to be in the room with the TV. You got to log on as developer by clicking a menu button, then selecting Smart Hub, and in the Samsung account menu on your remote. Then you go in, you enter an IP address, you hit Start User App Sync. So all of this is, unless the CIA has been in your house with access to your TV, Weeping Angel is not a threat to you. Now, do they have something to control it remotely? I don't know. I don't know. But if they did, in 2014, would they be working on Weeping Angel? I mean, maybe. They could just be wasting your money. They seem to be pretty good at that. But you're saying, but what about the phones? What about the phones? So let's look at iOS implants, because we've got another manual for Dr. Boom. This is for implanting on your phone. So can we do the phones remotely? Let's see. Next. So these are all the phones. Look, all the iPhones. iOS all the way up to 8.0. All the iPads. They even got an iPod down there, I think. The iPod Touch 5th generation that this will work on. to take control. Now, yes, if they get this implant installed, can a piece of software turn on your camera? Does Instagram turn on your camera? Does Skype turn on your camera? Are there phone recording apps? How about Snapchat? Yeah. Software on the phone, if it's given permission, can turn your shit on. But how does the software get on the phone? Let's go next. It's funny. Right here it says it's going to let you know. What are the prerequisites in order to install this on your phone? We're going to need OS X Yosemite, or it's untested on OS X 9 Mavericks, but OS X Yosemite and iTunes 12.0. That is a Mac desktop or laptop. You have to have a desktop or laptop to install this. Okay, and is it installed remotely? Let's go next. So here it goes. It talks about the installer script. So you're going to have to, you put this little piece of software on your Mac, you install it, use the NS installer, which is Night Skies, which is their project for the iOS. So is it remote? Is it remote? Let's go next. No. Here's how to install. Installing without deactivation. To install on a device without deactivation, plug in the device via USB. If the device has never been paired with the device, that's wrong. It should be if the device has never been paired with the other device or laptop or whatever. Make sure you hit the trust option on the main screen. So the first thing that you see here, this person has the code to the phone. They've got the code. They've got administrator access. Second, they have the phone in their hand. Third, they have the phone plugged in via USB. Fourth, they have a computer with this other stuff installed on it. Fifth, they're able to actually get on the screen and hit trust. And then they sit there while they install software on your phone. This means the CIA has to have possession of your phone to do this. Is there anything else on this one? Let's see what we got. Oh, and we know this because here's the readout, a little hard to see. You could pause this if you're on YouTube, blow it up. But basically, this is what it looks like when an app is installed, when it's side-loaded. This is how developers install apps when they're testing them. This is the exact readout. Any developer who develops iPhone apps will recognize a lot of this. See if we got one more on this. Not only that, the firmware has to be right for the exploit to work. So first you got to have the phone. Then you've got to re-flash the phone. You've got to re-flash the iOS device. That means you've got to, if anybody who's ever put new firmware on their phone, you've got to go through a special button sequence. They have to have control of your phone. Now here's the question. If they could do this remotely, like you're scared of them doing, would they be working on something that requires a USB? Would they be working on something that they needed to actually have physical control of your phone if they could do this remotely like you're scared of? Maybe they would. But what's rational to you? And clearly, WikiLeaks thinks this is the top level of shit that's going on. This is what we need to be scared of. If this is what you need to be scared of, how about you just, when was the last time you didn't know where your phone was? Let's be real. Let's be real. So yeah, sure, if you're a target of a CIA agent and maybe they send in a beautiful agent, it's really like James Bond now, send in a beautiful agent and she gets you drunk and hands off your phone before you wake up in the morning, and then when you get it back, it's yeah, okay. They have that capability. They have that capability. Just know where your phone is. Oh, what about Android? Here's Spotsroid and Roid Rage. This is the Android program. Really no different. This is talking about setting up the development environment. Again, It said follow instructions for the setup of Android environment. They're installing these the same way that a developer installs side loads an app. Go to the next one. Here you go. Again, once again, says it explicitly. How do you get this on there? Obtain a Galaxy S2 and connect to computer via USB. And then it talks about you're going to have to reflash it again. How do you do that? Put the phone into download mode. You hold the volume down button, the home button, the power button. Disconnect the phone, remove the battery, install the battery in the phone. Hold volume up, hold home, hold the power button. Connect the phone to the computer. Somebody's got to have your phone. Go next. So this is Roid Rage. This is the Android implant, originally developed by MDB, but now developed and maintained by ESD WGB Aquarius contract. MDB still serves as subject matter experts for this. This is uninstalling. It says this works with most versions of Roid Rage. So you go into Anger Management, and as an Android developer myself, I see right here, you've got ADB. That's the Android Debug Bridge. That can only be used via USB. Yes, it can be used via Wi-Fi. Android developers out there will know that. But in order to enable it being used by Wi-Fi, you first have to use it via USB to enable the Wi-Fi. So they can't even get it off your phone without connecting it. That's where they're at this point. So Christian, these were the big scary projects. These were the projects that even WikiLeaks themselves said, "Oh yeah, this is the big deal. This is the executive summary. This is huge."
What I'm getting out of it too is, unless you're friends or closely in contact with the CIA agent, there's no way that they're going to be able to do this. You know?
No. I mean, this is old school.
Yeah.
Right? This is old school tradecraft. Like, this is old school spycraft.
Which, yeah, and it opens another question too, because, okay, everybody's like, the government's 40 years ahead of everybody in terms of technology.
They're not.
Not true.
They're not.
And the only way that could even be an idea is if they're working with people that are ahead. So it's not necessarily the government. It's individuals or companies that are ahead, and then the government comes in and says, hey, you know, let's...
Well, I think what we have to ask ourselves is this. Is government, when it comes to technology, is government in any sector ahead right now of private industry?
In any sector.
In any sector. Because even you've got Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk whose rocket delivery technology is far advanced from even NASA. Mm-hmm. And you look at the budget that NASA is spending. The military, the government itself, does not build any of the hardware. That it buys hardware from the private sector, from contractors.
Right.
But the thing is this: those systems are, though a lot of that is restricted. Like, for instance, you and I can't build. The reason why a missile technology or airplanes, right? You and I can't build those and fly them because we have to have certain licenses from the FAA and all of that, right? We have to have certain licenses to do that. But to hack an iPhone, to hack an Android, you got to remember the kid who first came up with the jailbreak was like 15. The one who invented the jailbreak for the iPhone. Like, and the Android operating system is open source. Like, you can go on and get all those jailbroken ROMs and everything. Those are made just by dudes in their bedrooms. Like, those phones are known inside and out. They're taken apart and hacked at from the second that they come out. You think that you can get some guys, and they're not even the best, because the best the best Android developers work for Google.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't work for the CIA.
Just go to DMV.
That's what I'm saying.
Have a look at their technology.
The government never has better technology. Now, where the real risk is, here's the thing. The real risk comes from the CIA paying off somebody
Right.
at Facebook,
Yeah.
paying off Google. Why develop your own shit? Google's right there. Corrupt somebody at Google,
Yep.
right? Now, Google's code is looked over quite a bit. But I think that this is where you look and it's like people are worried about the CIA can tell what I'm doing. Do you have a Gmail account? Have you noticed that the ads on your Gmail seem to be tailored to the shit that you're doing or the shit
Right.
you're talking about? Google already knows what you're doing. You let them.
Exactly. In the user agreements.
Facebook knows what you're doing. You let them.
In fact, that's the primary purpose of Facebook.
To let people know what you're doing.
Exactly.
You're worried about people knowing what you're doing, but you keep posting on Instagram every other day. Shia LaBeouf basically, I don't know if you saw this, he put up, this tells you the point that we're at. Shia LaBeouf was like, I'm tired of people trolling my webcam. He had been putting these webcams around, and then people would come in and fuck with him. So he was like, I'm going to put one that no one can see where the ground is or anything. He put it at a flag that was just facing in the sky, right? Some dude on 4chan started watching the planes flying over and the contrails, and he mapped the angle and the times. And then he went and looked at, because they show plane routes, you can see those, that's public information. He went and looked at planes like he would mark an exact time when these two contrails would cross, and then he went and he found the angle of where it was, triangulated it, zoomed in. Some other dudes from 4chan went, found the flag based on that after he posted the coordinates, found the flag, tore it down, and put it. The flag had said, "He will not divide us." They put up a "Make America Great" hat and a Trump shirt on the flagpole. So I'm like, you can't hide. If someone really wants to find you, you're giving them enough information just by interacting on the internet. Mm-hmm. Your IP address already tells so much about where you're at. And chances are you probably don't have your location turned off.
Right. And if you look at principle too, you can't hide. But if you are thinking about hiding, there's something wrong, right?
Could be. I think people are just scared.
Yeah.
You know, I have some predictions about this, and we'll cover it. But we've taken too long here. Not really. I mean, I think that was a good deep dive. Thank you for joining me on that, sir. You know I enjoy doing these things. One thing that I want to say before we go, if you're questioning about why this might have happened, I just want to quickly go through this. Why would WikiLeaks blow this up? Could it be the CIA has infiltrated them? Could be a lot of different things. Here's my theory that I'm going to share with you. Here's the WikiLeaks donation page. Let's go to that donation page, sir. So we've got donate to WikiLeaks. You can do it by credit card, PayPal. Those are the first two. Now I don't know how much WikiLeaks gets off credit card or PayPal. I don't know. They don't release that. Now Bitcoin though, that's public. We can know how much they get via Bitcoin. Let's see this Bitcoin. Right now, as of yesterday when I did this, the balance, the dollar value of their balance in Bitcoin was about $25,000. I was interested to know, what was this release worth? Now you see the total received is like 5 million on there from this Bitcoin address. This is their donate address that you can donate Bitcoins to. That's not really accurate. I mean, this goes back to 2011, so that number is going to be much lower. That's in today's dollars. But as you know, Bitcoin in 2011 was like $6, something like $66 or something like that. Now it's in the like 1,100. So, but this is pretty accurate over the last 2 months. I just wanted to see what this kind of release generated for WikiLeaks from the time of the release on the 7th, which was Tuesday, to yesterday. And here's the totals. In that 1 week, not even a week, 6 days, March 7th to 12th, Their total that they got from Bitcoin, $8,100, with the single biggest donation being $4,212. Now, in February, for the entire month before that, the total was only $2,300, with the biggest being $790. So basically, a good release, if we use these numbers and we extrapolate them out, a good release, 1 week of a good release is worth about 4 months of just normal WikiLeaks operations. So there is now that's 8,000, but I would say the vast majority of people contribute via credit card and PayPal. Those are the first two things. We don't know how much those are, but we could extrapolate out that it's going to be 4 times, at least. You know, it's almost exponential, starts to get into. So follow the money. Follow the money. What does it hurt WikiLeaks to blow this up? What does it hurt them to hype it? Even if it's nothing. It's the hype that generates the money, because most people don't have the technical savvy to go through. That's why we went through it with you. We're going to try to not get so technical with our guest coming up, Kevin Hobbs, but I think this is a really awesome story. I'm interested to talk about it because it is real good and real new technology, unlike what the CIA is using. And that's stuff going on with the blockchain. It's also a very, very sexy story that has strippers in it. So we're going to go to a break, and we'll be right back with Kevin Hobbs. Welcome back to the Vin Armani Show. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Vin Armani. We are also on Twitter and Periscope. At Vin Armani is my handle there. And of course, you can stream us live on the Facebook page of our content partner, Activist Post. That's facebook.com/Activist Post. Now, I have a guest that I'm very excited about today, Kevin Hobbs, CEO of Vanbex Group. If you want to bring him on, Christian. I believe we have him. Kevin Hobbs is the CEO of Vanbex Group and founder of the Genesis Project. He brings over a decade of management experience to the firm after working in a variety of professional roles. He is interested in how blockchain technologies innovate how business is done in the future. Kevin Hobbs, welcome to the Vin Armani Show.
Hey, Vin. Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to have you on because I think this is maybe the sexiest story that we have covered, if you will. But it's also we talk a lot on the show about cryptocurrency, but we rarely have gotten a chance as of yet to talk about what other things the blockchain and blockchain technology could do. And so since this is a Vegas story, and since this is a fun strip club story, I figured this would be a great way to do it. So I haven't really introed this story yet, but it started with me getting a press release about the Legends Room. So maybe if you want to start, we can just walk this through and sort of how I discovered it as well. If you could tell us about this project. I know you're up in Vancouver, but you're working with the guys down here who are the founders of the Legends Room. So can you tell us a little bit about what's going on with this project?
Sure. Yeah, it's really interesting. So here at Vanbex, we work with a lot of startups and early stage companies that are specifically in the blockchain space. We're always looking for new ways that we can further the education and the adoption of this technology into real world aspects. So when the guys from Legends Room came to us, at first we were like, this really isn't what we would normally do. But then as we learned more about the business model, we were like, wait a minute here. This is really interesting. You have a membership-based business built on digital currency that allows your members to rent their membership, which is unlike other memberships to date. You have the liquidity of being able to trade those memberships on an exchange. And from a club standpoint, the business standpoint, you have lack of counterparty risk because they're going to be able to accept Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in the club for all products and services. So it really became interesting from a business standpoint, more than just a club in Vegas, which makes it all the more funny.
So let's talk about this. We've got three guys starting a club who actually have quite a bit of strip club experience and some bona fides here even in Vegas. The idea is, let's start a strip club. First off, let's accept Bitcoin, which I think is really awesome and very new. Let's be all about cryptocurrency. But also, let's have this membership aspect, and you can buy a membership with cryptocurrency. But then I want to get into this membership because it's a blockchain. It's sort of served on the blockchain. And because of that, you're able to sell your membership almost like you would sell a stock. So what I got out of this, I mean, I saw you guys referring to this as an initial coin offering. At which most people, or people who are aware of finance, are aware of initial public offering, which would be the first time that you offer that the public can buy stock. So there are some elements here of the blockchain almost acting as the intermediary or the broker to enable a business to take on investors, or in this case, to take on members. Can we talk about how this initial coin offering works? And mind you, this is not necessarily a financial show, and so I know sometimes it's hard to do like 10,000-foot views. So time to time I may interrupt if there's some additional questions that I have, just to keep everybody in the loop. But yeah, if you could talk to us about, they're doing this membership as an initial coin offering. Can you talk to us about what this initial coin offering is? Or maybe you can tell us what you get with the membership, and then you could talk to us a little bit more about how this initial coin offering works.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about kind of an initial coin offering or token offering. So traditionally you have an IPO, where a company will raise funds via a public offering, and they offer up stock or equity or some type of dividends to the public. An initial coin offering in the blockchain space is similar to that, but it allows for early stage companies that might not be able to do an IPO to raise funds to kind of get their idea off the ground. With Legends Room, it's a little bit different, as it's a membership offering. So they're not actually raising money to get the club off the ground. They're just selling their product, which is a membership in their company. The ICO model, or token offering model, I mean, there's many different words to use, is really just a vehicle to raise funds. The token itself is used for things like fuel or access, profit sharing, dividends, voting, or even a contribution into the product. For the Legends Room, they're using it as a vehicle for membership. Really interesting, what they're able to do is they're able to rent that membership out, which gives them a marketing base from their members that they wouldn't traditionally have outside of digital currency, because most memberships are not rentable in the space. The technology behind this is called multi-signature escrow, which allows them to be able to do this so that the memberships actually never leave the ownerships of the members. Does that kind of give you a little bit of background?
Okay, yeah. So let's kind of step through this, because this is, I was aware of Ethereum smart contracts, which Ethereum is, that's the blockchain this is happening on, right? Is the Ethereum blockchain. So I was aware of Ethereum as a cryptocurrency, certainly. Smart contracts, I think, is one of these things that is it's so conceptually new, I think, that it's really hard, even for me, and my background as a software developer, for me to wrap my head around. I spent quite a bit of time with it, and I think I kind of have a good idea of it. And tell me if I'm basically in the ballpark. The idea is sort of that the blockchain is fundamentally this network of nodes, of miners, of different nodes that are all computers, and that we use them to do certain processes, and it's them all having the same sort of ledger and working on the same ledger and verifying the same ledger, sort of makes them into a single brain almost. And we've been using that with blockchain and with the other with Bitcoin and the other cryptocurrencies to basically just store, like a database, to store information about transactions. But what the Ethereum network does is it enables you to actually use them to run some code. and that you can, it seems like there are a lot of applications to be able to, these smart contracts, right? Seems like there's a lot of applications to be able to actually run programs. One of those would be something like, and tell me if I have this right, that I could buy a token. Let's say there were 100 tokens and a business was selling them for $1,000. I could buy a token, and by owning that token and having that token, I could get, say, dividends from the company coming back. I could have access to certain things. Is that, I mean, is that basically how it works? It's like automated dividends. It's like the stock market, but you don't need the SEC anymore. You don't need a trading floor. You don't need anything. It's a market. You could sell the stock hand to hand. Is that pretty much what it is?
In that aspect, it's kind of like that. If you think of the blockchain as a place to store and send information, think of a smart contract as a way to add instructions to that information. Okay. So if it was like a dividend or anything, you can write in the code in the smart contract that you are going to pay out X amount of dividends to someone who owns X amount of tokens on this particular date. And that could be quarterly, yearly, or whatever. And once that's all hard-coded, then the smart contract self-executes those contracts to pay out those dividends. And it can be done in a multiple different industries when it comes to this. There's many use cases for smart contract technology, and probably going to be one of the most talked about and at the forefront of blockchain development kind of moving forward. There's a lot of great things that Ethereum is doing right now.
So the membership is almost its own. It's weird because, like, I think we get stocks, right? Like, we get sort of buying and selling shares. Like, I think people get that concept. This membership, though, is also a token. So let's say I buy this membership, and I know the membership gets me access to a certain area of the club. It gets me a certain number of a dollar value worth of drinks, a certain dollar value worth of lap dances, which is cool, right? and I've now gotten a chance to talk with the guys who are founding this thing, and it sounds like they're really going to do great things for their members, access to private jets and cars and all these different things. But then so you said I could rent it out, but I can also then, without even their permission, I can sort of sell this token on the open market. So there then actually becomes a value for this token on the open market?
That's correct. So you'd be able to say, excuse me, if you wanted to sell it on the open market, you can do so. You would lose your membership if you did that, if you didn't have the correct number, either 1,500 VIP tokens for a silver membership or 5,000 for a platinum membership. You would lose your membership, but you could easily buy that back. So for people who are looking to play the market, they're looking for, why is this token going to go up in value? Well, it's a club in Vegas, so if they have a massive event with big stars, there's probably going to be a lot of people looking to pick up these tokens so that they can have access to this club and get close to these celebrities and things that are going to be in there. So on their aspect, that's kind of where the token would kind of go up and down.
And so obviously this isn't the only application for this. I mean, it seems like anything where it's really weird to me, this idea that you could have a membership in something, but like, I got this membership because I bought a piece of a membership from this guy, a piece of a membership from this guy, a piece of a membership from this guy, a piece over here, and then I had compiled it, and then I just walk up and now I'm a member. Mm-hmm. Like that, yeah. That is conceptually just a whole new way of looking at access.
Exactly. So instead of having to get really accepted at the club, and well, you will have to get accepted to the club. You'll have to be 21 years of age.
Sure.
They're going to have to let you in, but you can technically derive your membership from multiple different ways to be able to access it. That may cost you more or cost you less, depending on how you acquire that membership. The other interesting thing being, as a member, if you think of it like my gym membership, I'm lucky if I go to the gym once a week. If I could rent that out when I'm not using it and make a passive income, that might be of interest to me. So the membership being rentable has many other financial aspects besides just trading it on the crypto exchanges.
I mean, wow, what a good point all the things that people are paying for that are, I mean, I know I've got and I'm very bad about it. I've got a huge chunk of things that are monthly memberships that I'm just too lazy or too busy to go and, go it through my bank statement over the years. It's probably been thousands of worth of dollars over the years that I just haven't, and things that I'm not using, right? Things that I maybe had a membership for in LA that I just was like, whatever, it's $60 a month. I think I could deal with it. You know what I mean? Like, because it's just not worth the $60 a month to me. But the idea that we're coming to a space, it seems like, where this is something for people who are either starting businesses or who are looking to grow their business, to think, hey, here's this whole other revenue stream that we can have by either having this initial coin offering, by setting up some sort of membership situation, and then for people to look, if I'm at that sounds like such a great idea, man. I travel so much. Like, if I'm in Chicago and I want to go to like whatever the top gym is there, and I'm only going to be there for 2 days, rather than do a day pass thing, it's like, yeah, some guy who's not using it that day rents. It's kind of like an Airbnb of memberships almost. Is that kind of what it is?
Exactly. It's like an Airbnb of memberships, and it's a great model for any business that has a membership-based clientele or a timeshare-based clientele. You have a liquid membership you can rent out anytime. It's 100% secure, fully trackable and audible on the blockchain. And if you ever have to sell it, you just go on the exchange and sell it.
So what are you seeing as you, I think that's a great intro, because now I guess what I would like to talk about is sort of future moves for the blockchain. I think people are, I'm always way far out ahead, unfortunately sometimes, but it tends to catch up faster now, so you know what I mean? It's a little better. But in terms of future, because I know that you guys are really on the forefront, and maybe you could talk a little bit about the projects that your company is interested in, the things that you're looking at. What are the things on the horizon for the blockchain outside of the crypto? Obviously, cryptocurrency, people are realizing it. The market doesn't lie. Like, people are interested in having it, and you can't even really spend it everywhere yet. But in terms of non-cryptocurrency blockchain applications, this one's cool. But what are the things that you think that you see moving forward that are potential paradigm shifters and could change the way that things go just in culture in general?
Mm-hmm. Well, we consult with a lot of industries kind of outside of the blockchain to kind of find out how the blockchain technology might be able to change what they're currently doing, mostly with their digital processes and infrastructure. So what's really interesting, we can go back to talk about smart contracts, is making a smart contract accessible to everybody so that you don't have to be a coder to build a smart contract. Anybody can go in and you can create a contract with, say, you just hired someone to paint your house, and you know how troubling it is with contractors. They don't do the job, they don't come back to finish what they're supposed to do. You can set all these self-executable instructions into a smart contract, put the funds for that contractor in escrow, and then as you come to agreed upon milestones, that contractor gets paid for what they do. That's just a very, very simple aspect of it, which we're seeing a lot of applications for. We're actually building this with our Etherparty product. So one of the other things we do is we build blockchain applications. Another one that is really on the forefront is record keeping. So a lot of people are looking at the blockchain for record keeping. There's actually an announcement coming out on the 20th of this month by the CFTC that might allow distributed technologies to be a source of truth when it comes to their record keeping.
So, okay, this is something to explore, because I've also been hearing people talking about potentially like medical records. I've heard certainly there was a big hype about Arcade City before. I think they had this breakup about potentially doing a reputation, as in like, it's like an Angie's List type of thing, or like Yelp or something like that, that could be carried on the blockchain. I think this aspect of, and maybe we could get further into that, is using it as truth, this authentication, this idea of authentication, that this cryptography presents this decentralized way of really proving that either certain things happen, that is kind of unhackable, unfakeable, that can totally be trusted, and yet has no central authority. Maybe if you could talk a little bit more about that property of the blockchain.
Sure. So to talk about this, might want to talk about a little bit about archival science and archival bonds, which we actually already have a global standard for. And what that means is basically in order that something is the original record, that it is the truth that's being sent across this blockchain, we need to make sure that we follow a standard where all of this information can stay together and it can never be separated or put into like kind of different places and then rehashed together. So which is still kind of in the works. We're actually, we just started a one-year research project with the University of British Columbia on this aspect to find out how blockchain technology can really be a full system of truth, because right now there's still some inefficiencies that we're trying to work through with blockchain technology that allows this to be a 100% true immutable record, which right now it's not fully immutable. And a lot of it is wrapped around, not all industries are looking at decentralization. That's how it started, but a lot of industries are looking at centralized blockchains. So that's kind of coming up.
Now, what's the difference between a centralized blockchain and a decentralized blockchain?
So a decentralized blockchain would be fully public. Anybody could join it. Anybody could see what's going on with it.
This is like Bitcoin would be
Exactly.
a decentralized blockchain. Okay.
Bitcoin is a decentralized blockchain. A centralized blockchain would be a blockchain that has similar properties and values, but is controlled by a group. And the instructions that are in that blockchain are centered around what that group decided that is going to be transferred in this blockchain. So what information, what type of consensus mechanisms it's going to have, how they're going to share the information, and all the rules and governance. So a lot of the banks and financial institutions are looking at private blockchains over public blockchains right now.
So I think that that is a great and important part that, I talk to people and sometimes the people who don't know. Now, I mean, as a developer, like Bitcoin has been on my mind for a long time, since it just came out, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. I have no idea. And then in about 2013, just kind of when it was still at 15, that was when I started buying and developing on the blockchain. And then, I got lucky with the little things I had developed when it went to that 1,000 the first time. I was like, oh, okay, great windfall. But now, I'm seeing that it is in people's minds. But the thing that keeps coming up more and more for the people who are not people especially who have invested a lot of their mind share, I guess, in the idea of gold and everything. And I try to explain to them digital gold. But one of the things that they keep saying, it's a joke. Nobody's really, this is not going anywhere. But it's important, I think, what you're saying is that the technology of the block. Now, whether Bitcoin ends up being the end-all, be-all, I think there are a lot of problems that it has. It was the first one. I mean, look, there's no more MySpace, you know what I mean? But that started the social media revolution. Yeah. And I say people don't discount the power that MySpace had in terms of creating, the culture that we have. Whether it's Bitcoin or whether it's not, whether it's some other cryptocurrency, clearly the blockchain is not going anywhere. And you're saying that institutions that are the institutions that would be the most against something like Bitcoin are actually investing in blockchain technologies? Is that's what's happening?
That's correct. Very much so, actually. And you're exactly right. Bitcoin's a great store of value, but it's not good for everyday financial use, like buying coffee or, a meal or something like that. But it's great for larger transactions, better than anything that we have to date for sending currency globally.
Sure.
But financial institutions are looking at this and saying, hey, Bitcoin has its flaws. There's a lot of things we don't like about it, but look at this technology that can really save us billions, if not trillions of dollars, and how can we incorporate this in what we're doing? So a lot of financial institutions we talk about have been creating, like the Bank of Canada themselves created a digital currency that they were using internally to kind of test this, and they're now in their second round of the Jasper project testing blockchain technology to see how they could have a centralized blockchain ledger, basically, that they can use with all their banking partners globally. Now, some people in the industry are kind of against centralization, but again, it just shows that the technology itself is here to stay.
This is really, really interesting. Maybe I could get your opinion. I mean, we have gotten into cryptocurrency. I would hate to have an expert on and not get into this because it's something that I've been going back and forth with my people as well, and I think we all have differing opinions. I think a lot of people agree that Bitcoin, while it's right now, it still is a great entree for people if they want to learn about cryptocurrency. It certainly is ubiquitous. There are plenty of Bitcoin ATMs out there now and whatnot if you want to start playing around. It's expensive in terms of transaction fees because there are some technical things that need to be worked out. We've talked about that before. In your opinion, for people who are into cryptocurrency, for people who are, and again, this is an ongoing debate that we have, if it's not Bitcoin, in terms of other cryptocurrencies moving forward, what cryptocurrency do you see as being the most promising for those everyday potential transactions like you were talking about, like buying coffee? And I guess that's the question. Which one and why?
That's a really tough question, and I think about this all the time. I definitely think Ethereum has the most potential for a lot of reasons. But when it comes to Bitcoin and altcoin, I kind of think that Bitcoin has to be the standard and will be the standard when it comes to currency. And other altcoins will be there for different reasons, whether they're fuel or access or profit sharing or dividends, whatever that business model may be for those companies. I think that's more where the altcoin route goes. I think Bitcoin should be and can be, if they fix all these things, the unit of currency. Now, will they change the speed and the block size, and will it kind of make it to everyday life? Possibly not. But you can possibly be able to create something like a sidechain or increase Bitcoin where it can still be used, but for everyday use. And we're kind of still seeing that there.
I mean, I think the coolest thing to me about this, and having been a developer and been a hacker in the early days of the internet, what's the most exciting to me about this is it's an unregulated space, but the technology is as solid as it comes. I mean, if you go and check out blocks, there are tens of millions of dollars being moved around every 10 minutes as these blocks go up. You can see sometimes it's $50 million, sometimes $60 million per block. You know, in terms of the number of transactions moving through on this thing, clearly is showing decentralized technology. I mean, it's unregulated. It's absolutely global. What impact do you see? Because already we're talking about the financial markets, right? We're talking about the currency markets. We're talking about day-to-day currency. What do you think the timeline is, because you see these projects? What do you think the timeline is before? Again, this is just prediction. In your opinion, before this thing tips, because clearly it's got everything lined up for it and it's moving forward. When do you think is the point where this thing tips and the markets and the governments start truly getting worried that their edifice is about to fall down?
Oh, geez. I mean, I would say anywhere between the next 2 and 5 years.
Oh, that's soon.
Yeah, I think a lot of governments are looking to use this technology in some way. I think a lot of the hurdles comes with the regulation, you know, and also just getting your mind wrapped around the educational part of this technology. But a lot of them are really, really coming around. Luxembourg themselves are looking at becoming a smart city. Tunisia already uses the e-dinar.
Well, what's a smart city? How does that? What's that all about? I'm not really all aware of this.
Okay, so a simple example, Luxembourg wants to put everything pretty much on their blockchain. So that means identity, land titles, records, currency, banking information, trading information, power grids, like absolutely everything on the blockchain technology. So it's what's called a smart city, and everybody is kind of incorporated with that. Everybody can view everything. It's fully transparent, and you have an open society.
Would you be able to, is this a situation where you might be able to, like I could see like municipal bonds coming up this way, where you could kind of buy into Luxembourg's, you could sell shares of their utilities and whatnot on. I mean, is that the type of thing that's possible with this?
Possible. There's a company called Solar Change that can actually kind of plug into power power centers and offer a dividend payout for people using solar power and kind of pay them in what's called solar coins.
Wow.
So this technology is already kind of being developed in different places, and it's just how it's being accessed, how it's being used by different countries all over the world.
This is the very first start of something that is really cool. I'm really hopeful about it. I'm also glad that these guys did this strip club so we'd get a chance to meet you. Kevin Hobbs,
Yeah.
I hope that you will come on. I mean, I feel like now maybe we have a blockchain expert for the show. So don't be surprised if you're getting some calls from me about coming back on and explaining some new projects. This has been awesome, and my mind is like, so thank you so much for coming on. Kevin Hobbs of the Vanbex Group.
No problem, Ben. Thank you very much for having me on. Anytime.
you.
Lots to talk about.
We'll see you again soon.
Bye-bye.
So, the blockchain, Christian. Dude, it's like, this is a brave new world, man.
Yeah, that is sick.
All the things that this technology can do, right? I mean, and Bitcoin's just the beginning.
Yeah,
Clearly.
that's cool stuff.
Just the beginning.
It's cool stuff.
Okay. We've got a little bit of time. I wanted to do this with you. I've got a little Vinstradamus thing.
Okay.
Right? So we've been talking about things moving in cycles as they always do, history repeating itself. Even this is history repeating itself. Because this is remember the tech boom, man.
Yeah.
This is what it was like at the beginning of the tech boom. As people were trying to figure out, there were a ton of companies that failed, right? Because people were trying to figure out, they were experimenting with this new technology of the internet. What can we do? What can we not do? There were a lot of things that couldn't have even been imagined, like smartphones,
Yep.
right? And then when they came on, I mean, everything is internet connected at this point, right? That was, I was involved in the tech boom. I was helped to found a very small streaming media company in Hollywood in 1998. And we were just doing little radio things. I had a little radio show in Hollywood, and so I was the director of content. I wasn't even on really the tech side at that point. But what's funny is, like, I look at where we are now. I look at then. I see this sort of new technology moving forward that's powerful, that no one clearly is really aware of its full capability, but we know it's valuable, right? I see a contentious election with a kind of a goofball Republican and a Democrat, just like George W. Bush, who now, this week, they're talking about, he's released the book. And they've got the PR. History repeats itself. George Bush is back in, all of a sudden George Bush is back in the news. George W. Bush.
Yeah.
This new technology. We've got Donald Trump. We've got the fact that, look, even Gore won the popular vote, just like Clinton did, but Bush won the Electoral College, just like Trump. And I remember, I don't know if a lot of people remember, 2001, right around this time, shit was really good.
Yeah.
Shit was really calm. It was cool. There weren't a lot of worries. Weren't a lot of wars in the world. Things had calmed down. We had this weird thing happen in the Balkans where all these little factions were fighting, very similar to what's been going on in Syria, right? That had managed to calm down. And that's what kind of has me a little bit worried for what might be coming in the next months. Because I'm seeing a scenario that on too many levels looks almost exactly like 2001. In terms of this political sphere, in terms of the cultural sphere, in terms of the technological sphere, all of these things. It's really it. And I'm not saying, I don't believe in like cabals and conspiracy theorists of all that there's some hand moving these things around.
Right.
I think we naturally just move in these cycles. And I think that we need to pay attention to the things that are happening. But I know it's a very dire prediction, but I would say we need to keep our eyes open and I really feel like we almost have another shot at this because we did it wrong after September 11th.
Right.
We did it wrong. That way didn't work. We got to keep our eyes open. We let a lot of freedoms go away. And I feel like now it's dying down. The protests against Trump are getting less. We're getting into moving back around. We're coming out. We're coming supposedly out of a recession, having a little bit of a recovery. These businesses are growing. Technology is moving. You know, I hope that it continues on, but I have been feeling, and I just wanted to say it. I wanted to say it publicly, that like it really feels like that time, and it really feels like something could be on the horizon. Not to scare anybody, not to be paranoid.
Interesting.
I just wanted to point out the parallels. That's all I'm saying. Either way, though, dude, we're sticking to principles.
Yeah.
I think that we have solutions, and no matter what happens, the solution is not with the state. That's what we learned already.
Yep.
Let's not, things move faster now, so, we're going to get to be adults if this thing happens within the same. We need to not allow what happened last time to happen this time. If it was to happen. I'm just saying, I'm front loading it. We're going to keep moving along with the solutions that we have that are outside of the state, that are outside of government. We're going to keep on moving with those solutions.
Awesome.
So, I think we covered a lot today.
Yeah, it was great. Great.
I think we covered a lot. LegendsRoomLV.com if you want to go and check out this strip club, if you're into it. Interesting, very interesting story. Keep track of the things going on the blockchain. Oh, counter markets. Do I have counter markets? Yes. One way that you can keep track of that, Counter Markets, which is our new newsletter. We here at the Vin Armani Show and the folks at Activist Post, you want to know a little more about the blockchain? You want to know about the 5 most promising blockchain assets besides Bitcoin? Something that I asked our guest Kevin Hobbs, who I really want to thank. Countermarkets.com. You're going to get your first issue for free, first month, every month. I've got stories in there, a story that I wrote. This month, we've got some wonderful stuff. Entrepreneurship, entrepreneurialism. It's always, which one is it? Definitely things about automation, about agorism, about Bitcoin and the blockchain. Countermarkets.com. This is the first Agorist newsletter ever. We're very, very proud of it. This one is like 50 pages, chock full of great information. Go get it for free. It'll be delivered right into your email box. Hey. And you can see, of course, more of us. If you want to check out this podcast, you can listen on iTunes and Stitcher. You can check out the archive of this show at youtube.com/VinArmani and at youtube.com/activistpost, where we have the best of the Vin Armani Show. You can go back through the episodes and see the stories that we've covered, all of our great guests in miniature, bite-sized, curated format. So I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank my guest, Kevin Hobbs of the Van Bex Group. I want to thank Mr. Christian Reyes, as always. And next week, we will be back with another show Monday at 10 a.m. Until then, stay free.